Welcome to the Unheard Cries of a Mother, the podcast, where we dive into the raw, unfiltered stories of motherhood, the joys, the struggles, the sacrifices, and the triumphs. Here, we amplify the voices that too often go unheard, shining a light on the incredible strength, resilience, and love of mothers around the world. I'm your host, Sabrina Ben Salmi, and I invite you to join me as we uncover the stories behind the smiles, share the lessons learned, and create a community that uplifts, supports, and inspires. Today, I'm honoured to be here with Debbie. So, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Sabrina. So lovely to be here with you. I am honoured to be with you. It's fantastic.
Oh, it's going to be amazing. So, we're going to get stuck right in with the first question. Can you share a pivotal moment in your motherhood journey that shaped who you are today?
I thought about this, and there are probably more than a dozen, but
Yes.
one of the main pivotal moments for me, I guess, was when I nearly lost my son. And that is something that I think any mother that is close to losing a child, it just really does define how you feel and it does shape you. There's no two way. You can't come back from it. So, my son, was rushed into hospital and he had a twisted gut. Now, interestingly, I had a twisted gut before I was even pregnant. And so I kind of intuitively, instinctively knew there was something wrong. But the doctors kept saying, oh, it's a appendicitis. And being in the hospital and watching his stomach just swell and swell and swell, and talking and asking repeatedly for some help and guidance or whatever from doctors that kept coming in and out until eventually I literally prayed so hard for some help that I'll never forget him. He was really good looking, young doctor. He was lovely. And he actually spoke perfect English, which was beautiful. So I didn't have any barriers. And he walked in with so much confidence. He took one look at my child's stomach and he said, I have to take him to surgery straight away.
Wow.
Yeah. And if that hadn't happened at that moment, because when they actually did open him, his stomach burst. And so you're talking sepsis, you're talking all sorts of things. Yeah. And I remember he said to me, it could be appendicitis, but I'm going to have to think of something else. Another little miracle. At the time, right, in that hospital, at that exact time that he opened up my child, a Mr. Carr, the higher surgeon, happened to be at the hospital that day. And they called him straight down to the surgery and he saved my child's life. But the worst thing was I spent, the idea of him going down, oh, he'll be a few hours, that'll be fine. And 6 hours later, pacing, trying to get some answers. I literally could not calm myself down. And, I couldn't speak to anyone on the phone because I was just full of this energy that I could feel, this pain. And I kind of felt like I knew it was my child. And then, after about 7.5 hours, there was a call from surgery to say that he was out of surgery and recovery. And the nurse said to me, Debbie, you can go down. Well, I can not remember. I remember feeling like I was running. But I also remember just arriving and seeing him on the bed and he was breathing. That's all I wanted to see. And then it felt like someone had took my body and slammed me up against the ceiling and down on the floor. I felt like I came down into myself. Do you know I had the most horrendous headache for a week, Sabrina?
Oh.
Nothing shifted it. I spent every night in the hospital with him, lying on, sleeping on a chair, and then they did give me a bit of a camp cot. but that was like down into a different room. So I literally did just, I don't even know how I did sleep. And I was on my own because I didn't have any parents with me. They were over in South Africa, no family. My husband was looking after my daughter, who was 3 at the time. So actually, my 7-year-old little boy was just recovering. And I remember the feeling of afterwards. I mean, I remember speaking to work and telling my boss, and he was so great about it because I'd had such a bad experience previous job with which we'll talk about, and he just said, just you stay where you are, do not worry, and what have you. And they sent me a big thing of flowers to the house and what have you, which I thought was absolutely lovely. And it was so, and I felt like I could just be here. That's what changed me, because prior to that there was so much change in my life. And I had 2 small children. I'd come from a different country. I had no family of my own. I had my husband and his family, but his mother had died. His father was going through Alzheimer's. It was all quite, so there wasn't really that much that side either. So I felt so alone. But I wasn't, because I had my spiritual connection. And I think that was probably one of the most pivotal moments for me. And when I think about it, I still feel that emotion. Whereas, often in your journey in motherhood, you'll think of things like, happy times and, all of that. But it's not that depth of emotion. So I think that is where I got a lot of strength from. But I think that's where I also got a lot of my my faith.
I want to acknowledge you for the courage and strength you had. And I think a lot of mothers will be able to connect with the fact of you leaving your body to be there with your son, to be his strength, like not being able to make a call because it was just about you being present and holding space. You told the entire story, and it was only towards the end you said he was 7, and I was thinking he was older, like 7. He was so young and so innocent, and I can't imagine how you must have felt at that time. But just what I do love, again, and I think this is a message to you as a mother watching this, is never underestimate the intuitive connection that you have with your children. When something doesn't feel right, don't second guess it. Just trust yourself. You are connected to them far more than you understand. So thank you so much. What a powerful start. Absolutely powerful start and beautiful. Really just a credit to the beautiful character that I've met in you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, so the next question I have is, what's one part of your story that you feel has gone unheard or unacknowledged?
My story, I didn't quite understand. My story I've just told you, or the story of my motherhood?
So this is something I'm going to echo back again. There are no rules here for mothers.
Okay.
So when I say your story, whatever story comes to mind, it could be the story you've shared. It might be another story. It might just be your holistic story. It's entirely up to you.
I do think it is, I'm going to say, because I did think initially it was about the story I've just shared. And I haven't really had acknowledgement of it from my family because they weren't here. And even though at times I might mention the fact, my son is 28, now, but he's still my little 7-year-old boy sometimes that I'm protecting. And sometimes I'll say things like, I've got to make sure he's done. And my mother sort of, well, why, That is where I feel that sort of bridge is missing. Because they weren't there, they don't. And I think sometimes my family, my parents especially, do think of me as this strong, undefeatable, courageous person that doesn't need support in some things, and I think that's probably my fault. Maybe I didn't articulate it enough. And also from that moment onwards, I also don't think I gave my husband the opportunity to be a little bit more understanding towards me. I became it was all about me and my protection of my children. It was just, I had this That's what I think is the interesting part of that story.
Yeah,
Because I thought I was on my own, but perhaps I wasn't, and that's the thing, you know?
yeah, I want to thank you for being so transparent, and I want to invite you at some level to just allow yourself to be with your feelings. I think sometimes as mums, we don't allow ourselves to have the space to just be in that fact that we did feel alone,
Yeah,
and not having to actually prep everyone around me, because at that time I just needed someone to hold me, someone to hold space for me, someone to be okay, and someone to figure out their own process. But you needed that for you. And I think it's really interesting that you highlighted, if someone hasn't been impacted in the same way, in that instant, in that level of intensity, the reality is their experience of that is very different.
yeah,
We can watch a movie together and we have individual experiences. So imagine if they're not in the room, they're only getting snippets of what you've told them, or even what you can perceive, because
yes,
like you said, you wasn't really in your body. There was so
yeah,
much going on, so you can only relay aspects, but you were there. You had to experience it firsthand. And I think sometimes as women, especially as mothers, because we have to guard our cubs to an extent, we don't always give ourselves time to just be in our feelings and know that it's okay to feel like that, because that's how you felt. It doesn't
yeah.
mean anything to do with anybody else, but that's just how you felt. And give yourself that credit in that space, please. But thank you. Really appreciate that. What support of words or encouragement did you need at that time? I know you've touched on it a little bit, but if you go
Mm.
a bit deeper, like what would you have liked to hear in that time, or needed, that would have made a big difference to your healing process thereafter?
Well, I kind of touched on it from my boss because I was very focused on work. I've always been very career focused. And at the time, I still was, only because obviously we had to make a living. We had to look after children. So I was always very, and as I said, he sent me flowers. And it was just such a beautiful touch. And with a card thinking of you, and please don't worry, come back when you're ready, that type of feel, right? But as I said to you, my husband was at home. He was working as well, also very concerned of whether he was in a new job, and he had to make sure that where he was working, he couldn't get time, all of that sort of thing. And he was looking after my daughter, and he'd bring her in to see Matthew, obviously, and I'd see her for a few minutes and what have you. In between sort of times he's napping, I'm rushing home and rushing back to the hospital and what have you. So him and I think, disconnected. And at the time, I probably could have done with a little bit more of that love, that holding me and letting myself not be as strong. But I didn't. I had this focus. And it's all very well saying, oh, you were really, really strong and brave. But there's just those moments when he's sleeping that I could have done with arms around me.
Absolutely.
And I think that probably is down to me not maybe asking for it. Perhaps, he obviously, and he was going through also the worry himself. He's a dad. He's a great dad. And I think, that communication was missing between us. He focused what he needed to focus on, and we had another child he needed to get to nursery and make sure picked up and things like that, because I just was not leaving that hospital. And in some ways, respect to him, because he never forced me. He never sort of said, you've got to, He just allowed me to be what I needed to be at the time. But I think maybe so sometimes I think we forget as mothers that it's all very well and good to be brave. But I do like the idea of, sometimes it's just really good to have that cuddle and that hug. And I kind of mentioned to you, just as a sidetrack, that I'd lost my dog a couple of weeks back. And, the love I've had from my children hugging me and loving me for that missing piece right now in my life, I think it's very important to find it. I think don't you can be brave, but you also need to be vulnerable, and you need to allow that emotion, because it took me a long time to get over that.
I really love a couple of things that you said that really stands out. As women in times of challenges, trials, and tribulations, and our worst nightmares, having to sit by the bed of our child that's in hospital, sometimes those words of "it's going to be all right" is all that you need to hear.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay. And I love the way you describe the hugs for women. It's such a grounding feeling
Yes.
that when you embrace the mother at the time of her suffering, something sacred takes place. She can feel that everything's going to be all right with the added comfort of the words. It's just exactly what's needed. But there's the third thing that stands out for me from what you shared, and I really want to echo this to mums, because often mums keep saying, "Oh, you're really strong. You're doing a great job." And I know people mean it from a place of love. But I do hear over and over and over again from mums, "I didn't want to be strong. Strong was all I had left. I wanted to be held. I wanted to be told that everything will be okay. But I didn't want to be strong." And I think it's so beautiful the way you've actually articulated that, because that's owning your truth. Sometimes we don't always want to be strong. There are moments when we have to be, don't get me wrong. And you will have many moments of you knowing that you've done that. But there are moments where you just feel, actually, I don't want to be strong right now. I just need to know that everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's really beautiful.
Mm.
Next question I have is, are you okay, hon?
I'm fine. I'm fine. Keep going. You'll hear the odd sniff.
Amazing. Like, the energy you're giving off is so beautiful and so inspiring. So the next question I have is, how has motherhood challenged your sense of identity?
Well, that is a lovely question. I thought about that quite a lot, actually. And one of the things that came to mind for me was I read somewhere about being able to be defined by elements. So water and earth and fire and air, right? We're defined by elements. That's how we operate. So our astrological signs, and that sort of gives us our characteristics. And I read that when you become a mother, you really can almost change your element to suit or to synergize with your child. And this is how they learn from you. I thought it was just fascinating to think of it from this point of view, because I'm a fire energy. Okay. And both my children, one is a water sign and one is a fire sign, and they're very different. And the way that they kind of view me, or the way that they we have a relationship, is different. There's no two ways about it, which I think is quite fascinating. But when obviously with my son, he was my firstborn, and I'd read about this, and I was thinking about how he is, he's a Cancerian sign, so he has this little crab idea of sort of hiding in his shell every now and then, what have you. What I tend to do is pull him out of the shell. But interestingly, he does the same for me, even though he teaches me. He my self-authority. Sometimes he'll stand and he'll say to me, "Mum, you've got to be able to do that. You can do that. That is what you should be doing." He kind of gives me that. And it's so amazing to think that, I have this little baby that is born within me and takes some of my characteristics, of course, and also has his own character, but we have this synergy. I love this idea of it. And I remember reading that years ago, and I think that is where my sense of identity comes from. When I hear my child saying something like, I don't know, he calls me into this sort of self-authority, or pushes me to create an inner something, and I think, oh, he's quite right. That's exactly who I am. He kind of gives me that reminder. And when you can put it down to, oh, we know each other really well and that type of thing. But I just think we also have that mirroring. We have that definite connection in some other ways. And it really did make me realize that when I'm dealing with my daughter, she's that fire energy, and she just motivates. She just literally, yeah, she's a motivator, and she doesn't stop. And she's got such courage. She's got the Leo courage. And so, I know I see that in her that is in me, and she inspires that in me in a lot of ways. And I think that's really important to recognize when we think about our children, how they give us our sense of identity. That is how I recognize it.
Powerful. That is absolutely powerful. I love the way you actually articulated that. And as you were speaking, I was really reflecting on when you said that you've got a different relationship with each of them. And it made me think about motherhood. Often we might say, I have one child or two children, five children. But the reality is, if you have multiple children, you are a different mother several times over. You're not a mother to all those children. You are a mother five times over, because they have very unique personalities. They are so different. But what I also love is how you spoke about how they ignite something in you. They draw out, and we sort of spoke about this offline in a different topic, that you get to that point of who's saving who's healing who. And in motherhood, it's like who's parenting who, because there are moments when they're young and you parent them, but they say things and you're like, wow, where did you get that from? And yeah, I want to step into that. Is that how you see me? Yeah. I love that pure raw love, because they see you in a way that no one else gets to see you. Our children watch every heartbeat, every breath we take. If you watch your children on the corner of your eyes, they are watching every essence of you. And in more cases, often than not, they know you better than yourselves. So I really love the way you express that your identity was formed in motherhood in a very unique way. It's beautiful, absolutely gorgeous, really nice. Next question I have for you is, can you describe a time when you felt completely unseen and unsupported as a mother?
I will. I'm going to bring it back to the fact that as working mothers, often that is the case. And I mentioned that I was in a situation prior. This was with my daughter. When I arrived in this country, I had a 9-month-old baby. I needed a job. And obviously I needed to find a nursery school. And I did see a job advertised that I knew I wanted. So I put every effort into it, and then I found a nursery school literally within walking distance down this main road, and it was available, a little bit more expensive, but I was like, I'm sucking this up. I want my daughter to be happy. She's 9 months old. I've got to work. But unfortunately, it was the type of company where we had this young up-and-coming career ladder driving lady who just did not have children, spent every waking hour working, and had a very different concept of life. And when we had to finish work at 5 o'clock, the traffic was so bad that short distance down to the nursery school would take over half an hour. Which meant that instead of picking up between 5 and past, I would often have to get there at after past and be charged extra. And as I said, it was quite an expensive nursery school, but I wanted my daughter to be at the best school. And it was nearby in my mind as well, but it wasn't when it was. So I said, I don't mind cutting my lunch hour in half. I don't even necessarily take lunch anyway, but could I please leave at about 10 to 5, because that little difference will get me along that road. I'll be there before that clock turns 5:30 and they start charging me for the extra. And I mean, I'm literally, you're 5 minutes past and you'd have a whole hour cost, literally. That's how strict they were. And I was like, I'm happy to do whatever, even if I don't take a lunch hour. I just wanted. She would not let me do it. She made it such a big issue. It was all about power and control, and she wouldn't see a reason to it. She would even make sure that she put on meetings at 4:30 kind of thing, so that they would go over 5 o'clock sometimes, so that you would literally be sitting in a meeting thinking, I am never going to get there past 4:30, 5:30. So this was awful. It was such a stress and strain, not only financially on me, but an emotional stress, because my daughter was being sort of left behind. Everyone was being picked up. Moms were coming and going, taking their, and she was still sitting there. Where's my mummy? So that was also another big thing. And then I would get there, and obviously the owner at the time, she would be in her little box office where she would like buzz you in to go and pick up your child. And she'd be like, you are late again. So I'm putting this on, and that's what you would walk into, and then have to go, hi, I'm here, don't worry, to a crying child, and this sort of thing. Well, I even tried to take it higher than her, but the person higher than her was like, well, what she says goes. That was the type of culture of this company, to the extent that obviously I did resign. And alongside me resigning, out of the team of 8 people, 1 went on maternity leave, and 6 resigned one after the other. So they left with 1 person in their whole team. So it was a very big issue, not just for me, but for other people. There were other things. There was a real cultural, and it was this 1 person. But just a little side note, Sabrina, which is quite funny. Years later, I ran into the very same madam, and there she was, right, working in a different company, all of that. She had a little boy, and she was a mum, and she was so loving about her child and all of this. And then out of her mouth came the fact that she was moaning about her boss, who didn't understand.
No way.
And I thought, well, there's karma for you.
She's completely oblivious what she wants.
Oblivious. I mean, she literally was saying that to me, and I thought, can you not remember what you put me through when my child was 9 months old? I mean, it was crazy. I also had a little boy who also needed picking up, further up the road towards the house. And he was also in after school, and I had to pick him up. I mean, it was just, and she couldn't see any of that. And that. So anyway, but what I wanted to say is, with work, that is one of my biggest bugbears today. It really had an impact on me. And I have never worked in a company again that cannot see a mother as being very important part towards the children, picking them up from school, being at home when they're sick, that type of thing. I think it's just not on.
I think I'm really glad that you mentioned it, not just as a past issue, but also being a present issue.
Yeah.
I think this is a great conversation for employers and for government policymakers, because that would make a mother feel completely unsupported, completely unseen. And that is the real deal for many mothers. There are so many mothers that can relate to your story to this very day, having to deal with leadership teams that cannot see the reality that you were willing to bend over backwards, missing your lunch, cutting it in half. You wasn't even taking a lunch in the first place, but willing to do whatever it took just so you didn't have to have the added factor of the extra expense, the extra stress, de-stressing out your daughter when you get there, because obviously if you're stressed out, you now have to mother in a stressed out state, and then to top it off, go into the nursery and picking them up, and they're like, you're late, as if I didn't know that. Like, you could think I
do feel guilty enough. Yeah.
The end of the story was quite shocking for me.
Yeah.
There was a complete glaze over of, are you free? Like, are you serious? Are you joking? But I do love how God has a sense of humor.
100%. Karma. Yeah.
Oh gosh, that is brilliant. Thank you. I love your stories. Your story is incredible. So the next question I have is, what has been the most rewarding aspect of motherhood for you?
Well, I think for me, it has been about the journey of, seeing my beautiful children in their adulthood now and still seeing them as my babies. I don't know how to explain that exactly, because I do speak to people that their children are just, well, what are your children? Oh, I don't see them. I don't know. I'm not sure. That, whereas for me, it's, even though I don't live with them, every day I have contact. Every day I know about their lives. Every day I can in some way help them, even if it's just words on a phone, or like my son had a cough and I could send medicine. Do you know what I mean? They're still very much, and they still accept it from me. It's like, I guess it's kind of like this. I don't know if it's the word respect or whatever, but it's so rewarding to think that if I phone them and they don't answer the phone straight away, they will ring me back within. They will never left me unread. Do you know what I mean? It's like there is this, and I've never ever sort of, oh, I'll punish you if you don't kind of thing. It's just an understanding. I think that's the word that I'm looking. It's this magic understanding, and that is my reward. And I have beautiful, beautiful children from this magic understanding.
I love that. What came to mind was this something I came across. It said that I'm your child by birth, I become your friend in adulthood by choice, and the fact that they still invite you into their world, and that's
Yeah,
all that you've got. That's so beautiful.
I love that. Yeah.
So my next question is, what advice would you give to your younger self about before becoming a mother?
Well, I thought about that as well because when I was younger, I was very much in this sort of career mode. That's what I was doing. And also, we moved countries. I came from Wales back to South Africa. And so there was a lot of sort of upheaval, really. But all the time I kept thinking, right, when I'm ready, when I know I'm ready, when I'm in a perfect position, I will have a child. But actually there is no perfect position. And I think that is a younger, knowing that as a young, and maybe I might have started a bit younger as well, because I had my first one at 28 and 29, and my second one at 34. I thought, that's what I wanted, and which is fine. It worked out lovely, but I think maybe I could have probably gone a little bit earlier. I probably couldn't have, I didn't need to wait as long. It was just, and it wasn't because I had a high powered position and I was about to be CEO of something. No, it wasn't that at all. It was just in my mind. And I don't know whether that was a sort of a thing that my mother might have embedded in me, in the idea that you get married, then you have children. This kind of idea. Well, today's world is very different. But I mean, I suppose sort of 28 years ago, it was different. 30 years ago, it was still very much you get married, you have children. But yeah, I think I probably could have done it a little bit younger. And I think you've got to understand you are as perfect as through the eyes of your children. And they see you as perfect. They give you unconditional love. And I don't think you can, I think that's for me what I would have liked to have known or thought of.
And I get this beautiful message from your answer in that sometimes we overthink the process. We're waiting for the perfect time, the perfect this, the perfect that. But the reality is there's no perfect time that's going to come. It's just what you make of it. And I think that's a really nice message. Thank you. Next question I have is, how do you balance the emotional weight of being a mother with your personal, whilst pursuing your personal dreams and aspirations? Bit tongue-tied there, sorry.
Well, I mean, I kind of feel like I'm in a very different place with that now. At the time, at the time when I was at home and I was working, full-time work, and I had two small children, all that. So that emotional balance was very much in favor of towards the children,
Mm.
always. Now, I'm not sure if that's always a good thing, because obviously it does make you become a little bit lost in who you are. And I've learned that now. So in a way, I think it's important to still recognize you do have a husband or a partner, and you do have a job, and you do have friends. But my waiting was very much all about I was working, living, providing for them. That was it. So for me, I don't think my balance was particularly brilliant. It worked out. I'm not going to say it wasn't. I loved what I did. I loved my children and all that. The reason why I say that as well is because at a point in my life, when I turned 40, you know that magic 40 where everyone suddenly goes, oh my God, I'm like 40. What am I going to do with my life? I went, right, that's it. I'm going to work from home. And it was a concept that I had never, ever considered. But by then, both my children were going into high school, or one was just finishing up primary and one was going into high school. And I thought, I've hardly spent time with these children, because I went back to work when my daughter was 6 weeks old. My son was 3 months old. So I'd given so much of myself in my working side of things, all because I wanted to make sure I provided for them. But what I forgot was actually I needed to be there much more than I was. We had quality time, don't get me wrong, but I just needed to see. I think that was a kind of a pivotal moment. We talked about it. That again shifted something in me. And I remember sitting on the school holidays, and I had my own business, and I was doing okay. I was bringing money in, and I was like answering phone calls at midnight, but my children were asleep by then, And I remember sitting on the sand dunes at the beach, and it was summer, and they were playing together, and they were rolling up and down the sand dunes, and I was sitting there in the sunshine watching them. And I thought, how valuable is this moment? Because I have never experienced this with them. Yes, we went on holiday, but it was that 2 weeks. That's all we could do, because we only had 2 weeks off work. And you rammed in that 2 weeks, and you end up sort of having those fights to get to the airports, the fights back from the airports, the halfway through the holiday, those normal family things. But this was different. This was me just, I'm here, sitting, appreciating the laughter, appreciating what I was seeing in the sunshine, having control of that work environment almost. Does that make sense?
Absolute sense. So relatable. It makes absolute sense. Just when you just caught me off guard, I was like fighting to the airport. Like, yes, that makes sense.
All been there. We've all been there. Worn those t-shirts.
Everything in. We've only got 2 weeks. Let's make the most of it. It's like back to back. Oh God, it's so beautiful. But what I really love is as you share your journey, you're able to really grasp these teachable moments for mums. And I think some of the things that you highlighted was, where are you in your life? And I really love that, like including yourself in the journey. When do you have time for friends? When do you have time for you? When do you have time for your partner? Because all of those things are so important, especially as they're growing, because there will be phases that your parenting journey changes and they need you less and less. And then all of those kind of relationships that have been somewhat neglected, not intentionally, but unintentionally, because there are things to do. But as a mother listening to this, I think it's great to take note. and just really analyze, like, where are you right now in your own life? What does it look like? Are you heading towards there where you've got a bit of a holistic balance, or is there some areas of your life that's a bit more malnourished that you just need to add a bit more focus towards? So thank you so much for that very wholesome response. Really nice. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a very good point, though, Sabrina, if I may, just to say,
Mm.
if you are analyzing where am I on my journey, recognize that it's flexible. You can change. You do
Yeah.
not have to do the same that you did before. Your children are at a different age. You're at a different age. Your life is at a different place. So the flexibility of change has to happen. And I think that is something that we forget sometimes.
I'm glad you added that because it's so important. Mum, as you're listening to this, change is the one inevitability that we have in life. There's always going to be change, but
Yeah.
sometimes we have to just find that way to just surrender to that. I love that fact. Like, there's so much wisdom in what you just shared. Like, I love it so much in that don't frighten yourself or overthink it. Just realize that you get to change. If you
Yeah.
don't like the way it's been going, don't overthink it. You get to change from today. You can't change yesterday, but you get to change today, and you can change again in a few months. So it doesn't have to be set in stone and just be one way. Thank you so much for what you've added. That was a really perfect addition to that. Thank you. So the next question is, can you share a lesson that you've learned from your own mother or a mother figure that shaped how you parent?
Well, yes, I can. My mother, I mean, how can I say that? So ancestral ties are very profound in us as women, as mothers, definitely. And we have patterns and behaviors, and that are sort of instilled in us. We watch because there's often times where I used to think, oh, I could hear my mother talking.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, I open my mouth and out comes my mother, and I'm thinking, oh, what? Now my mother is lovely, don't get me wrong, she's a special woman and I love her dearly. But when I was growing up, my mother was working, they had their own businesses, she was working all the time. And when she wasn't working, based on how she had been brought up, very important to her was her friends, her social circles, what they did. And we were always the kids that went on a different table or were seen and not heard. That type of, and that's how she had been brought up. And I know this because I've seen it with when my grandmother was alive, and I've seen it how my mother is now as a grandmother as well. She still forgets sometimes by saying all the kids need to be on the table, and she's talking about me. I'm like, I am not a kid. But it was very much about that. And I spent a lot of my childhood being brought up by my grandmother, who would only come for a certain amount of months of the year to where we lived. But she was amazing. She played with me. She taught me theatre and singing and dancing and acting and having fun. And she was all about joy and that type of thing. She was also very spiritual. She taught me about fairies and numbers and all of that sort of thing. So she was very special in my life. And the rest of the time I was on my own. And I would be with my ponies doing my thing or whatever. I remember being 11 years old and I was at a show jumping show in a different part of the country, having travelled there with the coach and a few of the other kids and what have you, whose parents met us up there. Mine didn't because they were working. And I had a stomach poisoning, and I was walking the course being sick, and I was feeling so awful, and I was in this hotel room on my own feeling so ill, and all I wanted was my mother. Well, she wasn't there. But she had no intention of ever being there. She could have, it was her business. So, but it was never a thing. And even today, she still can trigger me with certain things where she forgets that her sort of, me, I'm important, but more importantly is somebody, a friend over here. And she'll know more about that friend and the friend's kids, and not me. And it's taken me a long time to heal that. And I think that is something, and they would have drinks and they would be, having fun. And I remember the parties, and I remember all that. When they weren't working, they were having good times, and they always had people over, and oh, lovely. Been like that all my life, my parents have. To the, and to the thing that is that when I became a mother, I mean, I don't drink. My children have never seen me drink alcohol. I don't smoke. I don't party. I've never had thousands of people over at my house having parties. None of that. To the point that they'd go to friends' houses and they'd be like, "Oh my God, their mother was absolutely plastered." I'd be like, oh well, not sure what to say, because I had this sort of vision, this image, and like going back to this idea of being perfect. Do you know what I'm trying to say? It was like, and also this idea of this balance that I mentioned earlier. My focus has been on my children, and I think it was driven from that childhood. Don't get me wrong, according to my mother, a wonderful childhood. I did. I had a lot. I was given a lot of material things. But the emotional, little points of that emotional was missing. And this is why I said right in the very beginning to you, I think my parents kind of see me as I don't need it. Because as a child, I never had it. And I never asked for it, obviously. And this is how my whole life became, and I had to really address that when I decided to find myself 3 years ago. But that's another story.
That is a very deeply profound share. Mum, as you're watching this, I really would encourage you to pause and just take a moment just to reflect, because you touched on so many different aspects, and talking about the ancestral line of motherhood and understanding the patterns of behaviors that we hand down, and the impact of having, not having balance, what it looks like someone giving you their love language, but maybe you're not receiving your own love language. So you really touched on a lot of aspects. And it's funny because there's so many similarities. A lot of us, I guess, kind of our age group can relate to the aspects of children being seen and not heard. It was very much like that. Like in our time, our grandmother would lock the living room because it was just for guests, and the kids weren't allowed in there.
Yes.
Had to leave when the adults were there because we're having adult conversations. And you spent a lot of your childhood in somewhat silence and not knowing things, and then you get to 18, you go, "Oh wow, is this the real world?" Because so much was. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I went overseas. I got to 18 and I was like, I'm off. I'm going overseas on my own. That's what I did.
My life. I should have come with you. I think you've really touched on something that can give a sense of relief for you as a mother listening to this. I think the way you've explained it is, if we look into our bloodline and look at the patterns of behaviors on both sides of our family. And I love what you said, because I've definitely had those moments where I've said something and I go, "Oh my gosh, that's my mother's voice." And it's funny when it happens because it's just their energy. You can feel them. It's really surreal, but it's neither good or bad. And I think this is really why I gave birth to this platform, because I think with us as mothers, we have so much guilt and shame around our feelings. Like, I don't want to be bad. I don't want to hurt you. I do love them, but I'm saying this. And the whole aspect of this is to have a space to just speak. Because the reality is, you already know you love them, but it doesn't mean you have to deny your thoughts and feelings. You don't have to deny the parts of you that felt like you were left behind, alone, or kind of shunned. That's okay. And I think it's really important to realize that as we share that, it's a place of loving yourself as well as loving them, instead of just loving others and not loving ourselves to speak our own truth. But you just really gave so many golden nuggets in that response. So thank you. Really, thank you. The next question I have for you is, how do you define motherhood and success as a mother?
Well, they survived. So I think that's the first thing. Woohoo! I got to 18. Oh, lovely. They're still alive. Funny you should say that. I was talking to my parents yesterday about success of motherhood, of parenthood, and they suddenly were telling me about a time when my mother, with my sister, she didn't like to go to nursery school. I'm digressing, but there is a message here, and she didn't like to go to nursery school. I was, according to my mother, loved nursery school. I went through the door, had friends, I was fine. I probably wasn't, but I had probably no choice. But I didn't like to say that. But my sister, she'd get a phone call, come and pick her up. She's crying, she won't stop, la la. So they'd bring her home, and she would sit for hours playing with her dolls. But my mother said she'd put her in the bath, and they'd forget about her because she'd be ages in the bath until suddenly someone said, "Oh, where is she?" This is what they were like. And then she'd be in the stone cold bath, little frizzled hands, wrinkled hands, with all her dolls all lined up, still talking away to her dolls. And I did think to myself, well, there we are. But both my sister and I survived, so that's all good. So what I'm saying is, yeah, my success is my children survived. But my success really as a mother is when I see, as I said to you, how lucky I am and blessed with the type of children I have, the two that I have, that, I haven't had. I mean, I know mothers that have had awful situations with children, and obviously, as I've mentioned, my son works with children that come from backgrounds and they have behavioral issues because of it. And I think the success really is where I see that my children are the ones that are helping other children understanding them to be where they, being able to show them where they should be. And I think that's my success. And they're such good people and I love them very much. And when I see them, yes, they succeed. My daughter's about to become a fully fledged lawyer now in September. She'll do her bar. I know, I love her to death. She's amazing. My son, the way he works with these children that we've talked about before, but he, and I just think, I'm proud of that. I'm proud of them. I really am.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I can't speak now. That is so beautiful. Oh, I love that. I love when you said success is when my children become good people, helping other people. I think that's beautiful. That is such a gift that they've gone into the world with big hearts. You've told me so much about them. They have huge hearts. They're just so much like you. It's beautiful. But your story about your parents is so hilarious and relatable because, I can put both my hands up and my feet up. I've got some stories that, oh, wait a minute. 1, 2, 3, 1, 3. Where's the one? So, yes, exactly. They survive and it's beautiful. And I love how there's so much humor. It wasn't funny at the time. There's certain stories, but we can laugh about it now. We can breathe. We can share. And more importantly, we can share that wisdom with the next generation, other mothers, to realize, I'm not alone. It doesn't just happen to me. It's just part of the journey. It's what makes motherhood so rich in all different aspects and bringing that balance. So amazing. Yeah, really funny. But you made me hot. I was just heating up. You're making me laugh too much. The next question is, if you could rewrite any part of your motherhood journey, what would you edit, if anything?
Well, I did think about this as well, and I don't know whether... Well, I would probably rewrite the connection between my husband and I. I can't rewrite who he is because he is a good father. No doubt about it, right? He was just not a good husband. And I can't say that I was a good wife. We just disconnected at some point. And I think it's at that disconnected point I would probably have liked to have be able to rewrite it. Because my children grew up in a home that was, there was no craziness, but there was a disconnect. There was a lack of love between two parents. And all my life, all I've wanted is to have this perfect love story, really. I read love stories, for God's sake. I want to have this love. Do you know what I mean? And I think it started out like that. but it got lost at some point. I can't tell you exactly where. I think, there's probably certain points along as they've grown up, but certainly in these later sort of 10 years, it's sort of been a big sort of disconnect, that we sort of just lived as people in the same house. And that I wish they hadn't sort of been exposed to, in a way. I hope it hasn't had a profound effect on them. That's all I hope for. That is my guilt. And I do admire, often I would think about leaving and I never had the courage. I thought I'd stay, better for the children, all of those normal cliche things that many of us have gone through. And, I admire people that are brave enough to just pick up those children under their arms and off they go. But I just wasn't that person. I just couldn't do it until I knew. I had this picture in my mind talking about a story of me. I used to always actually say to my friends, the day my two leave the house, I'll be behind them with my suitcase. I know. And I know.
I'd say, I'm going with you.
Yeah, but I didn't quite do it like that. I couldn't wait for them to leave. I did leave and left them with there, but they were then, in their 20s, and it's fine. But when I think about that, I think that but having said that, sometimes we get to a fork in the road and we can only do what we can do with what we know at the time and what we feel at the time. Hindsight is great. But, if I had done that, would I be sitting here now talking to you, loving life? I don't know, So things work out for a reason. And I kind of feel like rewriting any part would be probably futile because it shaped me. It made my life. It's my journey. And I've learned lessons. And my children are beautiful. So there we go.
I love this. Something really special about the way you share your stories. That is so much to take for any mother listening from different aspects of the story. There were parts of you that stayed a little bit longer, and mothers can relate to that. Sometimes they're in a marriage that's loveless, or they feel like they're living with a flatmate. You kind of two ships coming in the morning, two ships going out at night, and there's different aspects. I stay for the kids, or do I leave for the kids? Do I be really brave and courageous and just bite the bullet and take that leap? You've really kind of been able to really quite succinctly depict different journeys, because mothers from different walks of life will be listening to this and it's me calling to you as a mum, pause and just be really authentic with yourself and think, what season am I in? Where am I right now? What is it I really would like to do? And I'm kind of second guessing, questioning it. And there's just that moment when you just have to be truthful with yourself. Are you going to wait 15 years to do what you could do today? Are you going to take the leap of faith, or do you need someone to hold your hand? And I really think you've really touched on some really important moments for mothers to just sit down and feel their body, wiggle your toes. They say, kind of just feel. Sometimes we're out of the body a bit, just be fully present and be honest with yourself. Where are you right now? And the truth is, if you rewrite your life, maybe you won't be the same person you are today. And every single person we meet in our life is in our life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. They don't turn up with a ticket and let you know what that is. Yeah. So it's just, I really love your answer. And I really just think it's such a gift if you as a mother really pause to digest what's being shared with you. Thank you so much. I really love that response. Really love that. My next question is, how has societal or cultural pressures influenced the way you view or approach motherhood?
I think I touched on that really earlier, of the idea of where I had that sort of almost that PTSD scenario right when I had my little baby, and I just think that today, I think it's getting better. No, don't get me wrong. And I think a lot more is what's the word, not allowed, it's sort of, it's not as sort of compact or as strict as it was. There's much, but I still feel there's more to be done. And I think from, for example, one of the highlights, I guess, that came out of COVID, people working from home. Now, as a mother, you are doing what I wanted to do when I turned 40, is spend time at home with my children. I can still do all my job prior to them walking through the door at 3 o'clock, and that is a very different type of scenario now. And I think that more and more it's opening up to that for us. And I think it's very important as part of what we are going to see in our children going forward, how they are going to be able to relate to motherhood, to fatherhood, to being the best type of people, because there will be a lot more of guidance and less strain and stress on mothers that are at home to see them in the door at 3 o'clock. And when these companies out there that are still in the archaic ages, I think they should be, shown up for that. I think it should be highlighted, and changes have got to be made. Mm-hmm. And of course, more and more and more women are becoming empowered. And we are starting to think we can work and be best women, including mothers. And we can make sure that we can take our children to work, or we can work from home, or we can, we have companies that are helping us in every way, shape or form to be the best career person that we can be whilst being a mother. Whereas before, that pressure was very different. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting, actually, because as you said that, it just gave me a flashback, because I've got a 25-year-old. And when I think about it, at that time, working from home was not a thing. Well, I don't know. Obviously, it depends. People, I know they had like digital nomads, I imagine, in Bali still, but it wasn't something I was aware of at the time.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't go to my boss and say, well, can I work from home? They'll just think I'm weird.
Yes.
You're okay. But then as I think it was Yasmin, my middle child, 2007, I remember becoming self-employed, but I wasn't necessarily fully working from home. But like you said, when it came into lockdown, it was like everyone was just like, schools were shut, everyone was just at home, whether they had a plan or didn't have a plan, you had to figure it out. But then after that, there was just so much flexibility. Well, I can go halfway back to work or work from home. And I love what you said, being able to finish work from home, be at home, welcome the kids. And again, although I'm saying the positive side, I do realize that, especially for you listening as a mother, it wasn't romantic for every family. Not everyone had that support system. Not everyone had that partner that can pick up the kids and maybe bring them home. So I know it is varied from family to family, but I just wanted to pick up on the great examples that you gave, that there were options. And I think if mothers at least have the options, being able to select what works best for them in their environment and for their family. So thank you so much.
That's a good point. I think right now we do have options.
Yes.
And you can say no.
Yes, exactly.
This is the thing. And you can make it work for you because there are options, but you've got to be open to looking at those options and be, okay, I'll work from home, but I'll have to have those hours to do it from home,
Exactly. Yeah, there's such a gift in your story. Thank you so much. So the next question I have is, what role has community played in your journey, whether it's been a source of strength or something that you've struggled with to find?
Oh, for me, community for me has been on my spiritual journey more than anything, because I probably 8 or 9 years ago now met a lady while I was working. I went to a fundraiser and I'd given a prize for one of the theatre shows that I was working at the theatre, and I was busy talking to a friend of mine, and not really paying attention to what was kind of happening on the stage and things like that. We were just having a catch up, and this lady approached and she said, "Oh, my life has changed so much," to my friend. My friend knew her, and she said, "And I feel like since I've been chanting, I feel like I've really changed my life. And I was looking at her and thinking, wow, she's got this aura, this glow about her. I want to look like that. So I said to my friend, what's this chanting? She said, yes, it's a chanting, a Buddhism chanting that they do. And I said, is it? And inherently, within me, I knew it was something I wanted to know more about. Well, 2 weeks later, that same lady contacted me. She'd won the tickets.
Oh.
Yes. So we were talking on email, and I said to her about her chanting, and she said, you're welcome to come along. And I said, thank you, I will. And from that time on, I went to this person's house, and there were several people, and everyone was chanting, and I learnt about Buddhism. It's the Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism, so it's Namyo Renge Kyo, which is the Lotus Sutra. Now, the lotus flower is the only flower that seeds and blooms at the same time. But what is so beautiful about, and it comes out of the murky depths, so it was very relevant to me and my stage of my journey and what I needed. And it was the 1 hour on a Monday night that I took for myself. In my motherhood journey of just everything was my children, I took it. And I was selfish enough to go every hour of that Monday night, and I loved it. And it wasn't selfish, it was selfless, because it helped me grow so much within the emotional value, but the community that I had, not only from those beautiful people, but it was like a spiritual upliftment for me as well. And more and more and more people I started to meet along my journey were having the same thoughts and were more spiritual and so on. And so here I sit today with my own community of spiritualism, of people that want guidance and help, and I'm here to do that because of my journey. And that is where community, the networking, the feeling of being, even in my work life, I'll go to a work event. Well, there we go. You are an example. And I will meet beautiful people that have spiritual guidance and are beautiful human beings. And I'm like, oh, how lucky am I? You know? And that is where I would like that to say, you know, it's just so beautiful.
I love your response for so many different reasons. And I think as a mum, I think this is another pause moment. Where do you have that 15 for me or 1 hour for me? And I think you said it so beautifully, like just innocently being out with a friend in a chance conversation. I don't really call them coincidences, I call them God incidences. But you had this beautiful interaction. You were like, oh, I like that, I like some of that. And I think it's so freeing. And the reason I'm saying to you as a mother to pause this is that the way Debbie's expressing this is that it's not always planned. Things will show up. And it's for us to grab it. If we're isolated at home all the time, we're just never going to move forward. It's like just having 1 hour. You can come back to the family more brighter, happier, recharged, energized, more grounded. And I like the fact that you said it's not selfish. There's a lot of guilt that comes along with motherhood. A lot of guilt of I'm taking that time away from the kids. You are with them all the time, every time. And sometimes actually, to be honest, that break away is better for you and for them. Because you're not just constantly going like a hamster in a wheel. You have a moment to catch your breath. You have a moment for someone to pour into you and not just see you as a mother, to just see you as you. Sometimes we need to do those aspects.
Absolutely. And that's what my Buddhism is about, is that inner healing. So where you heal within, that's where you shine your light without. And they outside, all of that energy comes back in a good way. You don't need external validation. You don't need to get anything external to make you a better person. It's within you. And that's where I aligned with that values all those years ago. And it's really important what you said, the idea of if you're at home all day on your own, you know, technology, look what COVID gave us, technology of, you know, here we're doing a podcast on a Zoom call. Do you know what I mean? And I just think we connect. My words of wisdom and guidance is about connection. And I did a live this weekend and there were ladies on there sort of asking me questions and what have you all over the world. Well, you know, there are are groups, there are people, there are connections, there's community, like-minded people. If you feel comfort in it, lean into it. That's what I would say.
That is such a needed addition to what we're speaking about, because I think sometimes the journey of motherhood can be so isolating. It really can, and sometimes I've heard mothers describe it as like the walls are closing in on them, and they don't get to see an adult. They're having beautiful conversation with little people, and they love that. But they, just as well as that, they would love to have you contact with adults, just to stimulate their brain in a different way. And I really love what you're saying with technology. Like you said, you can be speaking to anyone from around the world. Don't feel like you're into things that no one else is into. You know, they say that saying, there's an app for that. There's a group for that. There really is. You go out there and put yourself out there. And I feel like this is so important for mothers to just not isolate themselves to motherhood. Who are you outside of motherhood, as well as, not instead of, not replacing, but as well as, because we're multifaceted beings. We're not just any one way. So give yourself that permission to just be out there. And I can see how you've just lit up speaking about this. It's beautiful. It really is lovely. So the next question I have is, how do you cope with the guilt and doubts that come with motherhood?
That is a big question. And, I think that just goes back to what I just previously said. It's about looking at your inner world. The guilt of, oh, I've got to go to work and leave my child in someone else's care. That is a big thing, especially first-time mothers. I mean, second children, third children, we kind of like, oh, okay, I'm all right with that. But the first time, I remember sitting in the bedroom crying because I couldn't get anything to eat. I couldn't move. I had this baby wanting to nurse, and I was so hungry. I had to phone my husband, go and get me a Nando's burger. I couldn't walk to the kitchen. I mean, where was my head? Because we do find ourselves very much like that. But it's like now you've got to say, I do need to think about me. And this is the inner work. This is where I said it's not selfish, it's selfless. Take your hour, take your bath, and go and lie in a bath and read a book for an hour. Get someone else to see to, if you can. Or when they're sleeping for that hour, go and spend it for you. And really just be with yourself. Because it's selfless, because you become a better person. And if you're a better person for your child, for the people around you. You're not doing yourself any favors otherwise. So guilt is something that is a very dark emotion that we can transmute and change into a light. And that's what you've got to think of. It's not selfish, it's selfless. See a different perspective, see a different point of view. Definitely. And that's what I did, as I said, with the Buddhism. That Monday night, I was like, I was out the door. They're all like, what about food? I'm out the door. Feed yourselves. I'll feed you the other 6 days of the week. But, you've got to just think about yourself. You become a better person for that.
I love that, because I think I've heard lots of mothers get different advice, but a lot of the time mothers are told when they're asleep, do the housework and do everything else. And my essence is, again, pause and take a moment to say, my problems and the mess are loyal. They'll be there when I get back. When they're sleeping, please rest, take a bath, and you sleep. Because otherwise, when do you get time to catch up on that? But I love what you're saying. Guard that with your life. That hour that you get for yourself, guard it. They will be there when you get back. Everything will be okay. You'll be able to do everything when you get back. But give that time to yourself. It's so important.
Very important.
And I love that. Transmute the energy. I love that. Don't see it as a negative. It really isn't. Right now, what do you wish people understood about the emotional labor that mothers carry?
Oh, wow. What would... Well, I think... I'll just refer back to my PTSD story. Because honestly, that is a prime example of someone that had no clue, did not have children, had a very different focus in life. And the difficulty, I think, for a lot of mothers is being able to explain that. And, I also want to say for men, a lot of men, we have men as bosses, and they're not the ones that are at home with the children. Modern day men, probably a little bit more, but the older generation. My father, for example, even thought it was so funny the fact that when my sister was born, they were telling me these stories yesterday. Funny enough, my grandmother had to look after me. My father couldn't because he was working and doing his thing and la la. My mother was like, "You're not looking after her. You won't be able to. She'd never eat." Well, I thought, well, that's a bit rude, isn't it? But that was in those days. So your older generation, it is difficult kind of to get them to understand. They are getting better. We're not going to lie. There are men now that are really having to really focus on it. But the emotional labor, I think a lot of women feel disconnected. They feel like they're just being too emotional. They're not allowed to be emotional. They shouldn't show emotion. And I honestly want to say this, right? Motherhood emotion is one thing. Wait till you get to menopause. Here we go. We'll be doing another podcast, Sabrina, very soon. Because honestly, if you want to know emotion, so get used to being emotionally vulnerable now, because when you get to in menopause, you'll just wing it. It'll be fine. Honestly, and don't feel guilt for it. Don't feel disconnected from it. Don't feel you have every right to feel emotion because you are a mother and you are emotionally invested in something that is very important to survive. So there.
I love that, giving mothers permission to feel, to be emotional. Because that's really our default, really, the feelings. We are
Yeah.
emotionally connected to our children. Beautiful. Really nice energy around that. Really nice. Next question I have for you is, what legacy do you hope to live and then leave behind for your children?
Well, my legacy I hope to live is currently now as I am in my soul purpose. And my soul purpose really is about sort of being able to shine my inner light for those that need guidance in some way. And, help others like you are very beautifully doing. Mothers, for example, getting out of those tough spots, getting to grips with those moments of challenge and change. And that's my sole purpose. I'm talking to so many people at the minute that are coming on my path that are really up for doing that. Obviously, that is one part of my sole purpose. My other sole purpose is I would like to think about a legacy that, well, actually, I know I'm doing it now because I'm a teacher. And that is what I do. I have, 30 young brains and young people in my classes. And I always say to them, I could teach you theory all day long. Okay. But what I want you to become are the best versions of yourself. And I try and do that, and that is going to be my legacy, I think. And already I know I've got students that write to me or still contact me and say, Deb, you said this, you said that, you changed this, you changed that. And I think, oh, I can't believe that is so amazing. So if I just and the ripple effect to it, of course, Sabrina, that is what is so important. Those beautiful students of mine are going on to be parents, to be mothers, and they'll be the best versions of themselves, to be that already. There's going to be whether it be spiritually, emotionally, but it's that mind, body, soul balance. It's all of those good things that we talk about today in today's world that we really are trying to guide. That's my legacy.
Deborah, that's a beautiful legacy, and you're definitely living that. That's how I met you, and you came over at TED, and you were so warm, loving, and giving. And I really thank you for the person that you are. And you always shine that light. And we've had so many beautiful conversations. It's quite hard to actually answer the next question because I get into the question and then you answer it and I just feel send and chilled. I have to wake up again. It's really beautiful. No, it's really nice. Thank you. Beautiful legacy. It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Next question I have is, how has motherhood transformed your relationships with partners, friends, family, people around you?
Well, I think for me, I mean, I have got a very, very strong family. For the first time in the 20 years that I've been over in the UK, I do have my brother living round the corner from me, my mom and dad round the corner from me, my children round another corner from me. My family dynamic is very, very strong. And I have a beautiful nephew who, since I lost my Lulubelle, all through Easter, he has not left my side
Oh,
every single day. And what is so lovely as well is we've been going on walks. So his dog obviously misses Lulu, but because I'm still there and we're still walking, we're still doing, he's quite okay. But my nephew has been coming, he's going, come on, Auntie Debbie, let's go on adventure walks. And we've
oh,
been going on adventure walks where we've been going into nature. One pathway we went down through all the beautiful trees. I said to him, take your shoes off. He goes, why? I said, take them off. We're grounding ourselves. And we both took off our shoes and we walked along. And he did it. And he was like, that's lovely. And then I'm talking to him about fairies and all the lovely nature symbols and all of these things. And he just, every single day he's been with me. And it's almost like, he hasn't said it, but I think he's just felt he needed to be my support. But he's been my guidance to going off the beaten track, to finding the inner joy within me again, my inner child, because our inner child, I believe, is our higher self. And I think, when you've got to come to grips with pain or grief, things like that, you've got to find a way in which it's going to settle peacefully. And you have to let that, emotion again, you've got to change it. You've got to transmute it into something that you can live with and work with and be. And I think he's been my little angel for the last couple of days sent. And that's my family. And we sat round on Easter Sunday having a beautiful lunch that he cooked, my 12-year-old. Yes, he invited us all and he put the food together. He asked us to bring certain things and he did. He cooked for 2 hours solid, to bless him. He loves doing that. And he was like getting everything done and we all sat round and I just sat there in such a peaceful calm with my 2 children, with my mom and dad, with my brother, his wife, my nephew, their dog Scratch. And it was just, I was blessed.
that is so beautiful. I had no idea that all your family were here now. That is beautiful.
Yeah, the only person that's not is my sister, but I speak to her every morning. On FaceTime, again, technology. At least I
Yeah,
get to
thanks for
see her.
technology. Yeah. Do you know, as you were talking about your nephew and getting him to ground and talking about fairies, that's what your grandmother instilled in you as a young. Oh, that's beautiful. Wow. Your grandmother's love still lives in the family and goes right down to the current generation. That is beautiful. Oh, gosh. I have questions to get through, Deborah, please.
Sorry.
Seriously, that's so beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous. And at 12, cooking the meals for the whole family for 2 hours straight.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, gosh. I love hearing people's stories. This is just so golden. Really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Gosh, yeah, I'm really moved by that. It's beautiful. Really, I'm really happy for you and your family. And well
Thank
done for
you.
having the courage to be the first one here and bring everyone else afterwards. Thank you so much for sharing. So, the next question I have, oh, sorry, I kind of moved it a little bit. Just got a bit excited. My finger went the other way. Community. So, cope with guilt. Live. Okay. So, what has transformed your so no, that's the one. I've totally lost it. Unexpected lessons. Okay, okay, here I am. If you could change one thing about society, how society views and supports mothers, I know you touched on this earlier, but it's just in case there was some bits you wanted to add. So, how society views or supports mothers, what would it be? What's some of the
Well,
changes?
I mean, I think it is just about the understanding of what that emotional value is. I think
Mm,
that's where we've got to bed down. We've got to really change that. We've got to give help to mothers, especially younger mothers, first time mothers. Like I was on my own. I didn't have family around me, that type of thing. I mean, just from, let's just say, from the fact that, you go into a hospital here and you literally give birth and get chucked out the door within hours.
yeah,
And I think that has got to be changed. I think we've got to go back to being very much more this is a little human life. This is the life of a mother. This is what is going to happen next week, next year, while that child is growing up, because the mother is now in such a state. These sort of things. This is where I think it's, as with most things, it has to start at the beginning.
I love that. I really love the fact that you touched on this before, but you've even taken it to another level of depth. It At the time when a mother is giving birth, it's a time where she needs her village, she needs the community. How on earth can you give birth and then just be thrown out a couple of hours later and you have no support system? Like when you say it like that, it's just unfathomable how
Mm,
these mothers are able to work through that. I had their dad and I had my mother there, and she was directing and helping. And I didn't know what time it was. I didn't know anything. I couldn't
yes,
move. I was
yes,
just in my own world. And to
yeah.
think mothers are doing that on their own, I just wouldn't have known what to do. It just is so daunting. So I'm really glad that you spoke about that, because policies do need to change,
Yeah,
communities need to change, families, and just thinking how can we best support mothers. And sometimes these mothers don't have families, so how can the community step in and realize, I notice my neighbor doesn't have anyone. Let's just check in, make sure they're okay. And you can save a life that way. You really can. It's a matter of learning.
100%.
So the next question I have is, what has been the most unexpected lesson that you've learned from your children?
Oh, well, I think I've mentioned a few of them, but yeah, I think it is about how strong I can be. I mean, I knew I was a strong person when I was on my own and I was just growing up and I've always been, but I think that, and the fact that from a spiritual guidance point of view, I've literally had so much help. That is what I've learned from them. Like I think you sort of mentioned, sometimes they'll open their mouth and they'll say something and you think, well, where's that come from? Well, now I see it and recognize it as guidance. It is like they have been gifted to me for my life, and I have been gifted to them for their life. And this is where I went back to this idea of sort of synergy, of mirroring, of being able to recognize that sort of characteristics in each other. And I think that is definitely what I wanted to say. It's like really been about that for me.
Really, really beautiful. And it's funny because you've reminded me of a couple of things. One of the things is, it says that when a child is born, it's not just a moment to teach, it's also a moment to learn. And there are some indigenous cultures in Africa that they believe that when a child comes through, they actually come through to heal you of something and to help you to learn something. So there is scientific facts as well that stem cells are sent from the baby to the mother's damaged organs. So we're not just carrying the baby, they actually heal parts of our damaged organs. So it's interesting, some of what you've shared, and the gift, the two-way gift of them
Yes.
through us, teaching us our strengths, but they also house other gifts and tell you things and say things, like you said, that are just absolutely incredible. But how beautiful to be so spiritually aligned that you're now able to recognize it as source, as guidance, to say, This is what you need to hear at that time. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So the next question is, how has motherhood changed your perspective of yourself, your goals, and life in general?
I think for me, motherhood, changing my perspective of my goals was about coming back from that tipping point to being into a focused alignment of who do I want to be now? And taking those lessons and those things that I've learned, and being able to recognize them now in where I'm guiding in others. Like, I'll use examples of my motherhood times in my teaching with my students. In actual fact, I mean, I don't realize how often I probably do it, but when my two came to TEDx talk the other day, a lot of my students were there and they were like, oh, we've heard so much about you and so much about you. And I thought, oh gosh, I think I must use them as examples a lot. But that is what I mean. It's like, yeah, it's a journey that is part of my journey. I am still a mom. They are still my babies, but I am now Debbie.
Yeah.
So I started off as Debbie, and then I became mom, and then I became mom Debbie, and now I'm Debbie and still a mom. So I kind of feel like it's definitely that journey, you know?
But you know, I loved the way you entered the response where you said it was the tipping point. And I was like, yeah, that's a really good description. And then you get back on. But I also love the analogy of starting off as Debbie, then becoming mum, then becoming mum and Debbie, and then becoming Debbie but still a mum. I think that's so beautiful to kind of see that, because it is an evolution of self through
Yes,
that
it is.
journey. And absolutely, I agree. I was meant to agree with you before, but they will always be our babies. Like, we don't see them any other ways. They could be 60, 90, 100. They will always be your babies.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%.
So the next question I have is, what did you sacrifice to become a mum?
I don't think I sacrificed too much, to be very honest with you. I, as I said to you, I wasn't on a CEO ladder of success. I mean, I loved my work. I did what I did, but I did it to just earn money so that I could live a life. That was all my concept was, really. I mean, I never wanted to be famous so that I was a celebrity film star and then I became a mom and that was the end of that. No, that didn't happen. I think just from a sacrifice of, maybe I sacrificed myself a little bit, in the sense that, like I said, I became mom. And it was only much later that I suddenly thought I needed to be Debbie again. Who is she again? Where is she? Hello? Somewhere in there is a Debbie. And when she emerged, it was quite frightening, because I was like, oh, I don't know whether I like that Debbie. What is this Debbie? Who is this person? I need to make some changes. So that I think is that, that is the sacrifice, but it's not a sacrifice that I would ever want to change, ever, because I am absolutely blessed with what I have.
So true. Absolutely. Wouldn't change a thing. It's beautiful. Who were you before you became a mum? You spoke about the Debbie, but who is that Debbie? Introduce us to her.
Well, I was a Debbie that went into a room and commanded it.
Ooh.
I did. I was energy. I was very much, busy, very energized, very sharp, very intelligent. People, I like to have intelligent conversations with people. So, and I was also very good at what I wanted. I went and I got that kind of feel. I was very focused, very determined, very what have you. Like I said to you, I planned. I'm having a child at that age. I'm having another child at that, and it was all planned. So I was a kind of this planner. I was like this control. Then motherhood, the control side started to go, oh, what. But like I said to you, when that pivotal moment of almost losing my child, that is where I had to take my control back. And I guess that's where I sat with my motherhood of tipping into that, and the control of it, and making sure my children got everything they wanted. Do you know, I sold my jewelry so I could buy Christmas presents for them. It was just, it was all about them. And I'm not talking just, they wanted a brand name of something, they got, everything was their focus, the focus on them. And it was for the love of them. And I'm very blessed and fortunate that they came out all right, and they survived it all. But, the thing is, now, then when I sort of got past that side of things, I really did have to say, well, I don't want to be a control freak. I don't want to be that person that I was before motherhood. I'm here now. Coming back to that flexibility on your journey, I need to change myself now. And the change is where that's a new journey. That's a new side of you. And it's almost tapping right back into your inner child to find the light, to find that happiness, to find the belief in magic.
Wow, that's really beautiful to describe the full circle moment. But as you spoke about the full circle moment, I kept on getting that imagery of the lotus.
Yes.
That's just so beautiful how it blooms and it blossoms at the same time. That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really love the way you answered that question. What would you say is the gift of motherhood?
Sorry, the gift of?
The gift of motherhood.
Well, just the gift is being able to look at two human beings for me and know that they are just doing so much. They're the nicest people doing nice things for other people. They are loving, they're caring, and that is the gift of motherhood that I have for me. I mean, they bless me every day with just what I see. And that, I think, is really important.
So you've done amazing to make it this far. We got some couple of light-hearted questions, and we've really made really good progress, actually. So the first question I have is, if your children were to write a book about you, what would the title be?
Well, I thought about this, right? And then I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to text them and I'm going to ask them. So I'm going to tell you what they said because I wasn't, I'll be brave. Let's see. So my daughter, bless her, straight away came back and she said, the greatest of all time.
Wow.
So I thought, that's so lovely. I said to her, if you wrote a book about me as your mother, what would the title of the book be? And she said, the greatest of all time. And I thought, oh my goodness, that's so beautiful. And then my son, something along the lines of strong and caring. And then he came back with, her strength taught me, her love carried me.
Oh my God.
And I thought, oh, well then.
Oh, wow. Could you just say those two again, the two titles again, please? That's beautiful.
So,
I'm conscious I was laughing over them. And
my daughter's was the greatest of all time. And my son was, her strength taught me, her love carried me.
Wow.
So I don't think, that now is my gift. Can you see?
Thanks. Oh, there's just a beautiful energy from that.
I literally sat there with both of those titles and I thought, oh, that is my gift. How blessed am I?
That's really touching. Very deeply moved by those titles. Thank you. Wow. Yeah, that really moved me. I got chills.
Yeah.
It really gave me chills. Beautiful. What an honor. So the next question is, what has been the funniest mum fail moment that you
Oh,
experienced when they were young?
probably so many of them. I'm going to tell you a funny one. We were in Lanzarote and got off to a restaurant. Now, let me just give you a little bit of a background. Of course, I am in hospitality, okay? So, and I lecture tourism, travel, and events, don't I? And we talk hospitality all the time. So, whenever we go anywhere, I'm very much like about service and all of this sort of thing. And we were in Lanzarote, and my two children know me. They sit down, they just wait for me now to start critiquing everything. And along came this young lady, and sort of, not couldn't speak English very well, all that. And so that's fine. We managed to establish I wanted spaghetti bolognese. When it came, lovely, and I asked for some cheese. So could I have some cheese, some Parmesan cheese? And I'm doing the movement. Cheese, Parmesan cheese. And my two children are like looking at me. And the lady's doing this, and she comes back with the tomato sauce. So then I was like, cheese, grating, cheese, Parmesan cheese. And my two children are now doing this. In the restaurant, my husband's face, he just is like wanting to die and earth swallow him up, because I normally do that to him. And then she comes back with pepper. No, chiz, and I'm trying to pronounce it. And this poor woman, her eyes are going bigger and bigger. My children are like literally under the table now in embarrassment. Teenagers didn't want to know. Absolutely awful. Eventually I went, well, doesn't matter. I just wanted some Parmesan cheese. Off she goes, comes back with the Parmesan cheese. Cheese, she says. I went, yes, cheese. I've been saying it for like 10 minutes. Well, there we go. They were hysterical. They thought that was the funniest thing. It's one of the party stories that they always like to bring out, that Mom couldn't get this woman to understand. But there are many like that.
Definitely would have been sat at that table by myself. My teenagers would have walked. They go, Mum, don't do that.
I know. Now if I go and I sit down there like this, Mom, no. So, don't. Oh, okay. I won't say anything.
That is fantastic. Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, that's fantastic. That is. Oh, you've made me all hot again. But the fact that you got it in the end, that's what's really made it fantastic, funny. What was your go-to hideout when you was a mum and needed a break?
Oh, well, my go-to hideout, as I said to you, was literally my Buddhist group. But it was walking in nature, going off with the dog, being with the horses, out in nature. The thing was, I did have my daughter sticking to me like glue. She has always stuck to me like glue, and she is horse mad and what have you as well. So a lot of the time she was with me, but it was still very much my peace, my time. It was just being in nature. I'd get on my horse and ride up a mountain. It was lovely.
Sounds beautiful. What has been the strangest or most unexpected thing that you found in your children's pockets or backpack when they were growing up?
Well, I actually can't even tell you that, really. I mean, I can tell you, right, and we were talking about this weekend, Pokemon cards, right?
Yeah.
You know that's a whole big thing, right? And football cards. My son, all his pocket money on these damn cards. Well, I was forever washing them, Sabrina, because he'd leave them in his pockets. So I never cleared pockets. So I can't even tell you what I would find, because I would wash, £20 worth of football cards, and he'd go, and I'd have to go and replace them because I'd washed them.
Yeah,
I
no, we've all
never
done it.
emptied.
Yeah, no, we've all done it and made them cry. But the thing is, they get more because you feel so guilty. You're like, which one do you want to get? Get some
Yeah,
more.
yeah. I mean, today, obviously, if he'd still have them, he'd probably have quite expensive cars. But I wash them, so.
You and me both. You're not alone.
But that's it. There wasn't anything really that I would say that was unusual, or whatever, because I never went through pockets.
I not used to think it was funny to keep insects in there to make me scared. They used to love seeing mummy scared.
Oh my God.
And like bits of fruits, like I
Oh, I was
really
going to say with my daughter, well, she was sweets. And gooey sweets, and I'd put my hand in her backpack or whatever, and she'd be like, have hidden like these gooey sweets, and I'd be like, oh, what is this? Oh, she'd forgotten about them. Today she still puts her sweets in her drawer by her bed to hide them from her brother.
Posing questions. We're doing an excellent job. We've really made a good progress. So, if our community of listeners could support you in a transformative way, what are the 3 things you would ask for? It has to be for you and what you're doing.
Right. What I would ask for is for them to obviously support your channel first of all, because we need to get
all about you.
Okay. Well, then I would ask them to support my channel.
Good.
Because that is my inner light at the minute. That is my sole purpose. It is to get as much information out. So I would very much love them to be part of. We are all networked for a reason. So absolutely very important to keep that ball rolling, that awakening, that guidance that we need across the globe right now. It's about really looking at humanity in a different way, isn't it? An awakening. So that would be one. Well, I think that would be the only thing I'd ask for myself, really.
Anything else? Is there anything else that could happen? Are there any shows you want to be in? Any media you want to be featured in? Any mentors?
Any of that. But again, it would be just so that I could keep the platform raised. So if anybody wanted me to come on another podcast, I'm open. Or yeah, exactly. Any guest speakers, anything that you feel like would align with this progress that we want to make. That would I'm up for it. So yes, you're quite right.
Is it possible to give the listeners an idea of what it is you do, what it's called, and where they can go to find out so they know how to support you?
Okay, so it is Words of Wisdom and Guidance. It's on YouTube. That is the platform. I do a TikTok, but it's just a quick reading on a TikTok every morning. But on the YouTube, there are podcasts where I've interviewed many beautiful people, including our lovely Sabrina, on the podcast area. And that's Words of Wisdom and Guidance, the guiding voice. So, and then obviously on the YouTube side, there are videos that are my channeling videos, where I use cards and I channel messages that I get through that might be guidance for you that you might want to watch. And also I obviously do lives as well, where we just as a community get together, have chats. So that is on YouTube. It's Debbie Jenkins 79, at Debbie Jenkins 79.
Thank you very much for that. Next question is, what's one way that you aim to pay it forward as a result of our conversation today?
That would be it. I want to keep this ball rolling. I want to make sure that if I can help in any way, if my words of wisdom and guidance can help in any way, through channeling and making sure that the messages are heard, then I am up for helping in any way I can. Absolutely, to pay forward.
Might have answered my next question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, just in case you want to answer slightly differently. But how do you hope sharing your story today on the podcast will impact others?
Well, I hope it's given them a little smile. And hopefully it's given them some insight into their inner world, into their inner feelings and emotions, and maybe help them to come to terms with a few things. Sometimes things come to light when you're not quite ready to hear them, but they embed, they go to the subconscious, and a little bit later on it might just come to light, and you might think, oh, I'm sure I heard some woman talking to Sabrina about something. And so if that's the case, then that's all good. But for now, if when you've listened to this today, know that it has come from a place of love, of caring, of guidance and light, and that, you know, we are all here, and you are never alone.
I love that you are never alone. That's so beautiful. Might feel like that sometimes, but you're never actually really alone. Next question is, as a result of the conversation that you and I have had today, what words of gratitude or appreciation would you like to say to your ex-husband?
I would like to say that I am truly blessed to have met Sabrina, first of all, because she is a light that many, many people have followed and are following, and I am very blessed to align with that light. But I'm also very blessed to be able to shine my own light, with this as a pivotal moment in my life again, of sharing and caring and networking and being something I never ever thought that I would be. But I honor my journey, I honor my faith, and I truly believe that I am here for my sole purpose. And that's what I want to be able to share and give.
No, I'm gonna say something that's really profound about your response. I was asking you to share a message of gratitude to your ex-husband, and this beautiful message came through. And as you shared that message, it was so, there was this beautiful energy that you had to say that. And I really thank you for sharing that and honoring yourself. And it's so interesting that you answered that with that response. We are going to go back because it's really important that you actually get the opportunity to say some words of gratitude to the father of your children, your ex-husband. What are words of wisdom, sorry, words of gratitude you would like to give towards him? But that was a beautiful answer. I really love that answer.
So, words of gratitude to the father of my children. I want to say thank you for showing up, for being in my life, for giving me so many moments of laughter and happiness and joy, and my beautiful children, because without him, I wouldn't have them. And I know that without a shadow of a doubt.
That's beautiful. You're giving off such a beautiful energy. I feel so just charged. I've got chills. It's really beautiful. The next question is, what are you proud of yourself for?
I'm proud of myself for getting this far. But I am proud of myself for my achievements in work, from my working life. I did another pivotal moment back when when I decided to go back to university and to get my degree so that I could lecture, be a lecturer, because again, all I wanted to do was share knowledge, share experience and wisdom in some way to others. I wanted to definitely be able to shape minds. And at the time, I didn't realize it, but shape souls. And I'm very proud of myself for that moment, because I came from a very dark place. I was very depressed. And much like the lotus flower that comes out of the murky waters and blooms in the sun, finds that light, that happened to me. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't completely Right. It wasn't something that I necessarily thought, because initially I thought it would be college and it would just be those sort of 17-year-olds, 16, 17, 18-year-olds. But it ended up in university and that higher education. And it ended up on the very same course that I did when I was 18 years old.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
Wow,
there's some more magic.
that's interesting. I didn't know that. That's
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I've gone like a 360.
yeah, interesting. We go back and help who we once were.
Yeah, well, interesting. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Very interesting. The next question is, what do you want to say sorry to yourself for?
What do I want to say sorry for? Do you know what? For a long time, I felt so guilty about leaving my animals behind. And I did it when I was a child. I left my horses in Zimbabwe when we moved to South Africa. My father promised he'd bring them down, never happened. He did bring my dog down, so I did have my dog, but my horses were left behind. And one of my one of my ponies had a new rider, and they took him to a show, and the horse box caught alight, and he died. Yeah, and I found out about it through a friend of mine who came to visit me about 6 months later, and I felt so guilty. And then I did the same thing again when we left South Africa and came back to the UK. I left my dogs and I left my horse and I left them again, my animals. And I felt so guilty again. It was like, why, there was no way that I could have brought them all here anyway, from a cost factor point of view. I tried to find them the best homes I could, but I still felt very guilty. Never knew what happened to them because I never even kept in contact with anyone. But back in those days, we didn't have mobile phones that we could, be on FaceTime with so and so. And so I felt very guilty about that. And then with Lulu now, again, she had cancer and she'd had a lump for about 2 or 3 years, and the vet kept saying it's just lymphoma.
Oh,
And yeah, and then of course it presented as cancer, and it just went so aggressive from the 9th of March to the 26th of March. She was gone. And whilst they did say to me she had, obviously the cancer was inside her and it only presented when it attached to that lump on the outside, that you would know about it. I get that, but there's just always a part of me that thinks, oh, should I have known? Should I have done something? And I couldn't have done anything when I was 14, 15 years old because didn't have them. And I couldn't do anything when we left 20 years ago with no money to go to another country with two small children. And I took advice from a vet for 2 years. So, yeah, that really is. And it's not good to have the guilt, but obviously it is an emotion that is in my heart.
yeah. It's something that you can choose to let go of and forgive.
But you have to let go, absolutely. And I have been working on doing that. I mean, I haven't spoken like that about anything like that for a long time.
Oh, thank you for
And
sharing.
I completely now understand, obviously, the dynamics of it because there was no ways, it wasn't in my control.
No,
And I
no.
think that's sometimes where guilt can sit. When it's not in your control, you do need to recognize.
Yes. Are you familiar with the Serenity Prayer?
Yes, I am. I love the serenity prayer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Give yourself that,
absolutely, 100%.
give yourself that grace to forgive yourself and say sorry to yourself for it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They're a lot more in spiritually connected than we feel. So animals, they know exactly what they come to serve. They would have walked you to your next phase in life,
Exactly.
known what was
Exactly.
coming way before you would have known. So
Yeah.
don't hold that. They're definitely not holding it. They come along to heal us. They really
Oh,
do.
they did. And, even giving them to other homes, I was really careful of that. But also, I found a little bit of solace in the fact that thinking that they were then going to be giving their beauty and their strength and their wonderful light to another family, another person that perhaps
Next
needed.
assignment,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. But the love you have for them is what's really lovely.
yeah.
What do you have to say thank you to yourself for?
That's a big one for me because I struggle for a long time with actually doing that, but now I work very hard actually on trying to remind myself that I have got gifts and that I've worked hard to be where I am, and that I should be thankful for all that I am. And that is really important. And sometimes we forget to do that. Even your external features. For a long time, I wouldn't look in a mirror. I'd never in a million years take a selfie of myself. Goodness me. It's like, oh, look at, but it's about finding that love. And I think that's what I'm thankful for to myself now, because I've worked really hard to get to where I am now. To just be able to say, Debbie, you look beautiful today. Debbie, you are strong. Debbie, you are courageous. And that is something I'm very thankful for. And I know it's my inner light that has begun to shine in that way.
I'm really proud of you. Thank you for
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. The final question I have for you is, what are you willing to let go of and heal from as a result of our conversation today?
Um, I am willing to let go of control. It's about the surrender to a life force energy of knowing the unknown, of being okay with that, with knowing that you are protected and guided and loved and supported in all sorts of ways. And that is about letting go of the control. Because what you imagine is not what is going to come out. It is something very, very more powerful than you would even be able to imagine often. So that is what I would definitely from this. I mean, just the fact that, we had a conversation one day in October last year. Then we had another conversation and loved each other, and I did a beautiful interview with you again. And we just seem to have connection and synchronicities and what have you. Well, I could never have imagined that, could I? That's my learning.
And it's been a pleasure connecting with you. Is there any final words? I know you said a really beautiful statement towards the end. I just want to make sure, is there anything that's there that you want to just share with the listeners, with mums? Any final message?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you to your listeners for listening to me. I really am very blessed to be able to give my insight and my thoughts and, have this connection with you guys. I've loved every moment. I mean, it's been very long, but it's been absolutely beautiful. And I'm bouncing. I've got so much energy bubbling within me. I just want to go for a run or something. It's just amazing. It's so beautiful. But just as I said before, don't ever, ever think that you are alone. Spirit is always there to guide you. Trust in your higher self. Trust in what you know, especially as a mother, your intuition, your gut feeling. No one knows that baby better than you do. You are the one that have carried that baby within your body. That light within your body for 9 months, and you know that body better than anyone. So just trust in your gut, trust in everything that you are as a mother. You will always, always be guided with that.
Wow, I'm so glad that you actually gave us that last golden nugget, because you've shared so much wisdom, so much wholesome responses, and it's been an absolute pleasure having a conversation, holding space for you, Debbie. Listeners, let's turn words into action. If you've been moved by today's story, think about how you can offer some support, no matter how big or small, whether it's through kind words of a message being sent directly to Debbie, sharing some resources, or reaching out to connect with our guest. Let's build a community that uplifts and empowers each other. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Unheard Cries of a Mother. Your story matters, and together we can create ripple effects of understanding, support, and transformation. If today's conversation resonates with you, please like, comment, and subscribe, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, as mothers, we are stronger together. Until next time, let's keep lifting each other up and turning unheard cries into powerful voices. Thank you so much, Debbie. Really an honor.
Thank you so much. Much love.